They say life slows down after 70. But here's the truth nobody talks about. For many, life actually begins to shine in ways you could never imagine. The noise fades, the pressure lifts, and the hidden treasures of living finally reveal themselves. Today we're uncovering 10 subtle but powerful ways life gets better after 70, and I promise by the end you'll see aging in a completely new light. Part 1, Freedom, Priorities, and Hidden Joys. When we think about turning 70, most people imagine decline, slowing down, aches, and limitations. But what society rarely highlights are the invisible gifts that come with this age. The truth is, after 70, life doesn't just change, it evolves into something far more meaningful. Let's dive into the first 3 subtle ways life gets better after 70. 1. Freedom from other people's expectations. Think about it. For most of our lives, we are bound by invisible chains, what others think of us. In our 20s and 30s, we chase careers, relationships, and approval. In our 40s and 50s, we juggle responsibilities, families, and reputations. By the time we reach 70, something remarkable happens. Those chains finally fall off. You realize that you don't have to impress anyone anymore. You don't dress for others, you dress for comfort. You don't make choices to please the world, you make them for yourself. That liberation is priceless. Take the example of an elderly woman I once met. She said, "At 40 I wore clothes for fashion. At 60 I wore clothes for my job. But at 70 I wear what makes me happy, and if people don't like it, that's their problem." Her smile said it all. The freedom of living for yourself is one of the greatest gifts of aging. At 70 you understand that people will always judge, but their opinions no longer carry the weight they once did. You've lived too long, survived too much, and seen too many seasons of life to care about unnecessary noise. And in that moment, true freedom begins. 2. The joy of sharpened priorities. Another subtle shift after 70 is clarity. Your priorities sharpen like never before. You no longer waste time on things that don't matter. The arguments, the gossip, the meaningless stress. You let them go because you've learned the hard way that life is too short to waste on nonsense. Instead, you focus on what truly matters. Health, peace, love, and simple joys. You learn to say no without guilt. You stop running after endless achievements, and you finally slow down enough to enjoy the sunrise, the laughter of grandchildren, or the quiet of your favorite chair. This shift in priorities doesn't come suddenly, it's the result of decades of experience. You've tried chasing success, wealth, and recognition. Some of it brought happiness, some didn't. But after 70 you've learned the ultimate lesson. Happiness lives in the small, everyday moments, not in the endless race. And that clarity is like seeing the world in high definition for the first time. Everything unnecessary fades into the background, and what remains is pure and meaningful. 3. Discovering hidden joys and slowing down. For most of life we run. We run for jobs, children, responsibilities, bills, dreams, and survival. Life feels like a constant race. But after 70, something subtle yet powerful happens. You no longer have to run. You're allowed to slow down, and in that slowing down, you discover joys you never noticed before. Suddenly, the morning tea isn't just a drink, it's a ritual. The sound of birds outside isn't background noise, it's music. Walking in the park isn't exercise, it's meditation. A man in his 70s once said, "When I was young, I wanted life to move faster. Now, I want every moment to last longer." That's the magic of aging. You start noticing life's details, the ones you were too busy to appreciate before. Slowing down doesn't mean giving up. It means finally savoring. It means living with presence instead of rushing blindly through days. And that subtle shift turns ordinary moments into extraordinary treasures. The bigger picture of part 1. So, in these first 3 ways, life after 70 becomes better because you no longer live under the shadow of other people's expectations. Your priorities sharpen, bringing clarity and peace. You discover hidden joys in slowing down and savoring the present. Aging isn't about losing, it's about gaining a perspective that only time can teach. And the beauty is, these gifts often remain invisible until you reach this stage of life. By the time you're 70, you don't just survive, you start to truly live. Part 2, Emotional Clarity, Connections, and Inner Peace. In Part 1, we explored how life after 70 brings freedom from others' expectations, sharper priorities, and the hidden joy of slowing down. But that's just the beginning. Once you step deeper into your 70s, another transformation unfolds, an inner one. This stage of life unlocks new emotional strengths and deeper bonds that younger people often spend decades searching for. Let's look at the next 3 subtle ways life gets better after 70. 4. Emotional clarity like never before. One of the greatest gifts of aging is emotional clarity. When you're younger, Emotions can feel like storms. Anger, jealousy, and insecurity often take control. But by 70, you've weathered so many storms that you develop an inner compass. You see situations for what they really are, not just how they make you feel in the moment. Small irritations that once ruined your day now barely scratch the surface. You no longer get tangled in unnecessary drama because you've learned that peace is more valuable than proving a point. Imagine this. In your 30s, if someone criticized you, it might have kept you awake at night. At 70, you might smile and think, that's their opinion, not my truth. That emotional maturity is powerful. It saves energy, reduces stress, and helps you live with calmness that younger generations crave but rarely achieve. This clarity also extends to forgiveness. You realize holding grudges only hurts yourself. So, you let go more easily, not because people always deserve forgiveness but because you deserve peace. 5. More meaningful connections. Another beautiful change after 70 is how relationships evolve. When you're younger, your social circle is often wide but shallow: colleagues, acquaintances, social obligations. But in your 70s, that circle naturally becomes smaller and deeper. You spend time with people who truly matter. You seek conversations that nourish your soul, not just small talk. Friendships grow richer, and family bonds often deepen as you focus on quality over quantity. Grandchildren bring a fresh kind of joy, one you couldn't have imagined when you were raising kids of your own. Their laughter feels like medicine, their innocence like sunlight. And unlike the stress of parenting, being a grandparent allows you to love freely without the weight of responsibility. But meaningful connections at 70 aren't limited to family. Many find a renewed sense of community, whether through local clubs, faith groups, or simply neighbors. These connections may be fewer in number, but they carry more depth, warmth, and authenticity than most relationships formed in earlier years. In fact, psychologists say that after 70, people become more selective about social bonds, a phenomenon called socio-emotional selectivity. Simply put, you stop wasting time on people who drain your energy. You invest in those who truly uplift you. And that, in itself, makes life better. 6. A surprising sense of inner peace. Perhaps the most profound change after 70 is the quiet peace that settles within. It doesn't mean life becomes perfect. Challenges and health issues still exist. But you begin to see life differently. In youth, we fear the future. In middle age, we regret the past. But in your 70s, you live in the present more naturally. You stop obsessing over what could have been, or what might happen, because you've learned the only moment you truly have is now. This inner peace often comes with acceptance. You stop fighting life and start flowing with it. You accept that not everything will go your way, and that's okay. You recognize that every stage of life has beauty, even the final ones. Some describe this as a spiritual awakening. Others simply call it wisdom. Whatever the name, it's the same quiet strength, a peace that cannot be shaken by external chaos. I once heard a 72-year-old man describe it like this: I don't need a big house, fancy car, or constant excitement anymore. Peace of mind is my luxury, and I've finally earned it. That's the gift of 70, the ability to sit with yourself and feel content, even in silence. The bigger picture of part 2. So, in this second stage, life after 70 gets better because you gain emotional clarity, no longer ruled by storms of anger or insecurity. You cultivate more meaningful connections, fewer people but deeper love. You experience inner peace, a calm acceptance that makes life feel lighter. It's a transformation that doesn't always happen overnight, but once it does, it changes everything. Suddenly, aging isn't about losing youth, it's about gaining serenity. And this serenity is so powerful that even the smallest joys, a warm meal, a shared laugh, a quiet sunset, begin to feel like treasures. Part 3, Self-Acceptance, Simplicity, and Spiritual Depth. By now, we've seen how life after 70 brings freedom, clarity, deeper relationships, and a profound inner peace. But there's even more to discover. This chapter of life reveals treasures that most people spend decades searching for but rarely find until they step into their 70s. Let's uncover the next 3 subtle ways life becomes better after 70. 7. True self-acceptance. Perhaps the most beautiful transformation after 70 is learning to fully accept yourself. Think about how much of life is spent in comparison, measuring ourselves against others' success, beauty, achievements, or wealth. For most of life, we're caught in this endless competition. But after 70, that comparison game fades away. You begin to see yourself with kindness instead of criticism. The wrinkles on your face? They're not flaws, they're maps of a life well lived. The scars, the gray hair, the changes in your body, they're reminders of survival, of stories, of wisdom. Self-acceptance at this age means you no longer fight against who you are. Instead, you embrace it. You stop wishing to be someone else or somewhere else. You realize, this is me. This is my story. And it's enough. I once heard a woman in her 70s say, "When I was young, I wanted to be beautiful. When I was middle-aged, I wanted to be respected. Now, I just want to be myself, and I finally am." That is the gift of aging. The freedom to stop performing, to stop pretending, and to finally live authentically. 8. The joy of simplified living. Another subtle but powerful way life improves after 70 is through simplicity. Over the years, you accumulate so much: possessions, responsibilities, worries. But by the time you reach your 70s, there's a natural shift toward letting go. You realize you don't need as much as you once thought. The big house, the constant shopping, the endless obligations, they no longer hold the same weight. Instead, simplicity becomes a source of joy. Maybe it's downsizing your home, decluttering old possessions, or just saying no to unnecessary busyness. Simplicity brings a calmness that allows you to focus on what truly matters. And here's the subtle beauty: in simplifying your life, you actually feel richer. A smaller circle, fewer things, less stress, but more meaning, more time, more freedom. There's a saying, when you're young, you want more. When you're old, you want less. But it's not about lacking, it's about clarity. The less you carry, the lighter you feel. And in your 70s, that lightness is a gift. 9. Spiritual depth and connection. For many, turning 70 also deepens the spiritual side of life. This doesn't always mean religion, though for some, faith does become stronger. It can also mean a greater connection with nature, a sense of oneness with the universe, or simply a deeper appreciation of existence itself. Why does this happen? Because after decades of living, you begin to see patterns. You see how fragile life is, how quickly it moves, how everything is connected. You've said goodbye to people you love, and you've faced your own mortality. These experiences often lead to profound reflection. At 70, many people describe feeling closer to something bigger than themselves, whether that's God, the universe, or simply the flow of life. And with that connection comes a sense of comfort. You stop fearing the unknown so much because you feel part of a larger story. This spiritual depth also makes gratitude flow more naturally. You stop asking, "Why don't I have more?" and start saying, "Thank you for what I have." That gratitude transforms daily life into a sacred experience. Imagine sitting in your garden watching the sun set. At 30, you might have been too busy checking your phone. At 50, too worried about tomorrow's responsibilities. But at 70, you sit in silence and feel something deeper. A connection, a peace, a gratitude that fills your soul. That's spiritual depth. The bigger picture of part 3. So, in this stage, life after 70 gets better because you finally achieve true self-acceptance, embracing yourself fully without comparison. You discover the richness of simplified living, less clutter, more meaning. You develop spiritual depth, a profound connection with life itself. These are treasures that many people chase through books, therapy, and philosophies all their lives. Yet, for many, they bloom naturally in the 70s, proof that age is not just about decline but about awakening to deeper truths. Part 4, Gratitude, Joy in Small Things, and Leaving a Legacy. We've already uncovered 9 powerful ways life improves after 70. Freedom from expectations, sharper priorities, emotional clarity, meaningful connections, self-acceptance, simplicity, and spiritual depth. But there are still a few hidden treasures left, and these might be the most profound of all. Let's explore the final 3 subtle ways life gets better after 70. 10. Gratitude becomes second nature. Something magical happens in your 70s. Gratitude stops being an effort and starts becoming your natural state of mind. In youth, it's easy to take things for granted: the meals, the health, the relationships. At 70, you begin to see how fragile life really is, and with that awareness comes deep appreciation. You wake up in the morning and feel grateful for the sunlight streaming through the window. You taste food and truly savor it. You hear the laughter of loved ones and hold on to it like music. This doesn't mean life becomes free of problems. But gratitude changes the way you see those problems. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you begin to ask, "What is this teaching me?" Instead of focusing on what's missing, you cherish what's still here. And here's the beauty: gratitude amplifies joy. Psychologists confirm that grateful people are happier, healthier, and more peaceful. At 70, gratitude isn't just a practice, it's a way of living. 11. Finding joy in the smallest things. In our younger years, joy often feels tied to big achievements: graduations, promotions, weddings, success. But by the time you reach 70, the definition of joy changes. You start finding happiness in the simplest, smallest moments. A warm cup of tea on a cold morning. A bird singing outside your window. a short walk with a friend. These tiny experiences, which younger people often overlook, become powerful sources of happiness. Why? Because after 70 you learn to slow down, notice, and appreciate. You stop chasing extraordinary moments and instead embrace the beauty of the ordinary. I once met a man in his late 70s who said, "When I was young, I dreamed of traveling the world. Now, I find just as much joy sitting in my garden watching butterflies." The secret is not needing more, it's noticing what's already here. That's the subtle joy of aging. Life teaches you that happiness doesn't hide in distant goals. It lives in the everyday moments you once rushed past. 12. Leaving a legacy that matters. Finally, one of the most meaningful ways life improves after 70 is the awareness of legacy. At this stage, you're not just living for yourself, you're thinking about what you'll leave behind. But here's the surprising truth. Legacy isn't only about wealth, property, or big achievements. It's about the impact you've had on people's hearts. The love you've given, the wisdom you've shared, the kindness you've shown, that's your true legacy. After 70, you start telling more stories, passing down life lessons, and sharing experiences with younger generations. And while they may not always realize it at the time, these gifts shape their lives forever. Some find legacy in their children or grandchildren. Others in the students they taught, the community they helped, or even the small acts of kindness they spread along the way. You realize that even if your name isn't in history books, your influence lives on in the lives you touched. And perhaps the most comforting truth is this. Legacy isn't about being remembered by millions, it's about being cherished by the few who truly mattered. The bigger picture of part 4. So in these final subtle ways, life after 70 becomes better because you live with natural gratitude, appreciating life in every moment. You discover joy in the smallest things, turning ordinary days into treasures. You focus on leaving a meaningful legacy, not in fame but in love, wisdom, and kindness. These aren't just ways life improves, they're reminders that aging isn't an ending. It's a stage where the richest, deepest, and most meaningful treasures of life finally reveal themselves. Conclusion. So, let's return to the question, does life really get better after 70? The answer is yes, sometimes in ways so subtle that they're invisible to the outside world. After 70 you may not run as fast or work as hard. But you gain something far greater: freedom, peace, clarity, gratitude, and joy. You learn to live not in the shadow of the past or the fear of the future, but fully, deeply, in the present moment. Aging then isn't a curse, it's a hidden gift. And perhaps the greatest secret of all is this: life doesn't end when you grow old. In many ways it finally begins.